have back-to-back Sabbaths, and we are entering into the Moedim of Shavuot. And Shavuot means weeks, and the book that we study during the time of Shavuot is the book of Ruth. So take your Bibles and go with me to the book of Ruth. I want to try to give this book as much working over today as we can, because it's such a rich text. There's a lot of material in here, and I hope that you will engage with it, because I think it's worthy of that. The reason the book of Ruth seems to have been chosen, if nothing else, is that, as you know, many of the Moedim, the appointed times, come at the time of harvest. And the book of Ruth is set harvest-wise between the time period of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. Okay? And we'll see both of those in the book. Now, you also know that traditionally, that Shavuot speaks of two things. In Greek, we call it Shavuot, we call it Pentecost. Which is interesting because in the Hebrew scriptures, the sages say that Pentecost, or Shabbat, is the time when the Torah was given. So it becomes a day of celebrating the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. When they came out of Egypt, we have Passover to celebrate the coming out of Egypt and the deliverance from bondage. Then we count 7 sevens, 7 weeks of 7, and we get to the 49th day. And on the 50th day, we have Pentecost, or Shavuot. So this coming night, we'll have Shavuot all the way to the end of Sunday night. So today we have, in a sense, a regular Shabbat, and then we double back on a Moedim Shabbat. Doesn't happen very often, it happens every now and then. But I want to go to the book of Ruth because I love this book. I think it's one of the things that I do like the sages did is when it came to the Moedim, they said we should look at certain books that we normally don't give much attention to. So, you know, for the festival of Sukkot, we do Ecclesiastes. For Yom Kippur, we do Jonah. So for each of the different festivals, there's segments that we normally wouldn't look at that we do during this time period. So go with me to the book of Ruth. It says this, starting with verse 1, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges judged that there was a famine in the land." And that phrase right there is packed. It's front-loaded and it's packed because, number one, the judges in the book of Judges don't judge. They're military leaders. So when we hear the word shoftim or the word judge, we think of somebody with a black robe and a gavel. Okay? But if you look at the time period of the judges, and this is why in most of your Bibles we have Joshua and then Judges. Okay? So what do we know, though, about the time period of these judges? If there was ever a mantra, it was this: every man did what was right in his own eyes, and then the full phrase is, there was no king in Israel. It was a tribal confederation of the 12 tribes. Okay? And in fact, it's so bad that by the time we get to the end of the book of Judges, Judges chapter 19 to 21, I've called those, in my estimation, they're the worst chapters in the Bible. By the time that it's over, we almost have the tribe of Benjamin completely obliterated. And, in fact, in order to draw all the tribes to battle, a woman is hacked into 12 pieces. Now, we know that the kings of Israel later on are going to take an animal, and Saul is going to take an animal and hack the animal in 12 pieces and send this animal out to the 12 tribes, in essence saying, you're getting this piece of the animal, and what will happen to you is what will happen to this animal if you don't come to the battle, if you don't send soldiers to this battle. In the end of Judges, they hack up a woman into 12 pieces, and they send it out to all the tribes. So, if you read the last 3 chapters of the book of Judges, you know that it's one of the most deplorable times in the history of Israel. And I put on your notes that there were cycles of apostasy So Israel would go through these cycles. As you're reading the book of Judges, they would relapse, they would go into captivity, then there would be repentance, then God would send a judge, a military leader, to bring them out of captivity, and then they would have rest. And then the cycle would go all over again. Okay? And the whole book of Judges is this cycle of apostasy going on the whole time. Okay? But there's no king in Israel. They don't have a king. Now the question becomes this: is having a king, or is wanting a king, a bad thing?
Not in itself, no.
Not in and of itself. Not in and of itself. But why did Israel want a king when we got to the book of Samuel? They wanted a king.
Yeah, to be like the others.
To be like the other nations. They said, we want to be like the other nations. And we want a king to, and here's the idiom, to go in and go out. That means to go in and out to battle. We want somebody who can lead us militaristically and bring us victories. Okay? So we want to be like the other nations. Had they said, we want a king who will make us righteous and godly and will lead us into obedience to Torah, that would have been fine. But that's not what they said. They said, we want a king to be like everybody else. And I said to Samuel, they haven't rejected you, they've rejected me. They want a king to be like everybody else. Go with me to Genesis chapter 17 for just a moment. Genesis chapter 17 and verse 6. Genesis 17:6. Look at what he says to Abram. Genesis 17 says, verse 1, when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I'm going to skip down and look at verse 6. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. It was prophesied that they'd have kings. It was prophesied that they would have kings. So kingship wasn't a problem. It's kingship for the wrong reasons. Do you realize you can want the right things for the wrong reason? Sometimes we want the right things, but we want them for all the wrong reasons. And he says, if they want a king, it's okay to have a king if they want a king to make them righteous. In fact, Deuteronomy 17 says you're going to have a king. And here's what this king's going to do. He's going to write a Torah scroll. And he's going to judge the people with righteousness. Because he's going to know what the Torah says. So having a king wasn't the problem. It was wanting a king for the wrong reasons. Now notice what he says. In the days, there was a famine in the land. There's a famine in the land. Now the question becomes this. Why is there a famine in the land? At least you have to ask that question. Anybody that's read the Hebrew Scriptures, anybody that's read the Torah, if you've read Leviticus 26 and you've read Deuteronomy 28, he has told the people that if they act in rebellion against him, he will send famine. Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 both say, I will bring famine on the land if you rebel against me. So you have to at least, every time you hear this concept of famine, you have to at least ask yourself, is it possible that God is bringing judgment against them because of their rebellion against him? And it's hard for us to even, when we hear the word famine, we can't even get our minds wrapped around it. Not a person here can get their mind wrapped around the fact that there's not any food. Most of us have so much food we have it in our freezer, we have it in our fridge, we have it in our pantry. We have so much, we don't even think that there's ever a possibility that there could ever be a time when there was no food. It just doesn't even, it's not even on our radar. We don't even know what it's like to go. I used to tell my girls, you couldn't say to me, you could say to me you're hungry, but you can't say to me I'm starving. So you've never even come close to starving. You don't even know what that means. You have no idea what starving means. You know what hungry means. Okay, you get a little rumbling in your gut, and you're hungry, but then you know where to go and fill it. And you know where the next one's coming, and the next one's coming. You don't ever wonder to yourself, wonder what happens when all this runs out, because you know it'll get filled up again. We have so much bounty and so much blessing, we don't even know what famine is like. what the concept is like. But let's understand that Israel is a very agricultural society. And if you don't get rain, then the crops don't come in. All right, so look at what happens, verse 2. It says, a man from Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab. Now that's why I put all these scriptures up there about the Moabites. Okay? Here's the problem with Moabites. Moabites are really problematic people. Starting with their
Conception.
origins and their conception. So we read Genesis 19. The word Moab, Ma, from, O, his, Av, father. Moab means from his father. So we have the incestuous relationship of the Moabites and the Ammonites. That's where these people originate from. And Lot is a nephew of Abraham. And the Moabites, they refuse to give bread and water to Israel when they come out of Egypt. Not only do the Moabites refuse to give them bread and water, later on, we have Balak in Numbers chapters 22 to 24, who tries to hire Balaam to curse the Israelites, this king of the Moabites. And when that doesn't work, if you look at Numbers chapter 25, the women of Moab seduce the men of Israel to worship the Baal of Peor, and God has to bring judgment on the children of Israel for this idolatry that's also connected with sexuality.
Doesn't that go farther back because Lot lived in
He lived in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah,
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Sodom, and his girls were there, and they saw the kind of behavior that.
Absolutely, yeah. Sodom and Gomorrah is a really bad place.
And his wife was from there, and she was a pillar of salt.
Yes, which is interesting. If you go to the southern past Masada, way past Masada, out in the desert, they actually have a rock they say is Lot's wife. I convinced one person that it really was her. So they were like, yeah, that's really her. We don't know. It's like, but there's a lot of salt in that area, I will say that. You're up past the Dead Sea. And it's in a mountainous area. But bottom line is, yeah, Mrs. Lot turns around and she becomes an Amud Melech, a pillar of salt. His own children really are kind of oblivious to the whole thing. Lot gets out, they get into a cave. Anyway, you read 1930 to 38. Bottom line is, these two daughters are whacked out. Now, I'll tell you why they're whacked out. Their father was going to sell them out.
Yeah, he was going to have them.
He was going to have them basically messed with. When the angels are able to put blindness on the people and to block the door, and they get Lot out. But all that to say, the Moabites are messed up people. And then when you read Deuteronomy chapter 23, it says, no Moabite or Ammonite can come into the assembly up until the 10th generation. These are messed up people. I don't want them around any but my people.
And isn't it the future, the Moabites and the Ammonites, all the people that they fight against all the time?
They're part of the people. Yeah, they're...
well, part of the people that are against Judah and Israel.
Yes. Yes. So Moabites are... All right, so they go to the land of Moab. Now, that right there, you leave Bethlehem, house of bread, and you go to Moab. Okay, now look what happens. Yeah, you kind of get the feeling this is going to be bad news. It says this, the name of the man was Elimelech. Elimelech means, my God is king. The name of his wife was Naomi, means pleasant. And the names of his two sons were Machlon and Kilion. Now, Machlon and Kilion are interesting names. From what we can tell of the etymology of their names, and this is somewhat speculative, but it means something like weakly and sickly. Okay? So there's kind of you kind of get the idea they're not going to be around long with names like weakly and sickly. Okay? The text is kind of hinting that they're not going to be around long. Now look what happens. It says, the name of the man was Elimelech, the name of his wife was Naomi, the names of his two sons, Machlon and Kilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they went to the country of Moab and remained there. Verse 3, and Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her two sons. Okay, so just by the way of just something to throw out there, I've said this before, just for the sake of the women in the audience, most of you will be widows at some point in your life. Okay? That's just the way the statistics run. Go to any nursing home, and there's 10 to 1. Just the way it works. Women tend to outlive men. Now, we're wondering though, when we read this, is this a judgment? Is this judgment of God, from God on Element? We don't know. It doesn't say. But up to this point, there's a little bit of ominous hintings, okay? Then what happens? Then if you go and you look at verse 4, now they, the two sons, take wives of the Moabites. And that kind of tells you right there that things are not going well. No good Jewish boy should ever marry a Moabite. Why would any good Jewish boy marry a Moabite?
Because he's sickly.
Because he's weakly and sickly. Yeah. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. We don't really know what their names mean. We have hints and kind of some clues here and there. But so it says that they dwelt there about 10 years. So that they're 10 years. They just went to get out of the famine because there was food in Moab. But then look what happens, verse 5. Then Machlon and Chilion also died. So the women survived her 2 sons and her husband. So you have now Naomi, who has no sons, no husband, and all she has are 2 daughters-in-law. And they're Moabites. Okay, now look what happens. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, verse 6, that they might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people by giving them bread. Therefore she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. Verse 8, and Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go, return, each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them till they were grown? Would you restrain yourself from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Now, this word cling that's used here in verse 14 is the same word, Hebrew word davak, that's used in Genesis 2:24. A man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. Okay? Very, very intimate word. Orpah is going to play the foil for Ruth. Orpah is going to go back to her people and in essence go back to her gods. Ruth clings to her mother-in-law, and these 2 women have an incredible bond. And Ruth is going to become the caregiver and the caretaker for her mother-in-law, even though her mother-in-law, as she says here, I can't have any more children. So, you know what, it's best for you to go back to your own family. Go back to your own family and to your gods, and things will be better for you. You'll find a husband somewhere in your own people.